And now let's check out round 3 between Morphy and Loewenthal. So Morphy is playing with the black pieces and Loewenthal has the white pieces. The series of games between Loewenthal and Morphy was played in London in 1858, but the date is July 22, 2 days later after the second game, and Morphy is leading with 1.5 points, and Loewenthal only has half points. So Loewenthal starts the game with playing e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f6, the Petrov defense, knight takes on e5, d6, knight to f3, knight takes on e4, d4, d5, bishop to d3, bishop to e7, and Loewenthal castled, knight to c6, rook to e1, f5, c4, bishop to e6, c takes on d5, bishop takes on d5, knight to c3, knight takes knight, b takes on c3, also Morphy castled, bishop to f4, bishop to d6, exchanging the bishops, queen takes on d6, knight to e5, rook from a to e8, c4, attacking the bishop and bishop to e6, knight takes on c6, and b takes on c6 by Morphy. Of course, if queen takes on c6, then we have d5, forking the queen and the bishop, and black needs to resign, maybe. So Morphy captures the knight with the b-pawn and damaging the pawn structure. Bishop to f1, bishop to f7, queen to d2. Well, it looks promising for Loewenthal. Morphy captures the rook, rook takes rook, rook to d8. And now, the dream is ending very soon, you will see. Morphy is attacking on d4. Loewenthal played queen to a5. Queen takes on d4, queen takes on c7. But now queen to b6 was played in the game by Morphy. And Morphy wants to exchange the queens. If exchanging the queens, black's pawn structure is solid. After capturing back, and white has 2 isolated pawns. And this endgame is maybe more easier for black. But that's why we have queen to f4 by Loewenthal, not capturing the queen. g6, h3, queen to b2, queen to c7, queen to b6 again. Morphy is offering for exchanging the queens. Rook to e7, rook to d1, queen to c8, that's check, rook to d8, attacking the queen, queen to c7, and here comes rook to d1 again. Maybe Morphy wants to have a draw for repetition, and he is playing with the black pieces. Of course, after playing with the white pieces, Morphy will have the advantage. And also Morphy is leading with the score, so maybe he will have the psychological advantage after he is playing with the white pieces. And before forgetting, Loewenthal could capture the bishop with the rook, but then rook takes on f1, king takes on f1, and this leads to a draw by repetition. And black can check the king forever. And white is not making any progress. Actually drawing would be a better result for Loewenthal, maybe. But Loewenthal doesn't want any draw. He wants to defeat Morphy. So Morphy is leading in the scoreboard. We have queen to e5, not playing the same moves. Queen to b1, attacking the bishop, defending the bishop with the queen. King to f8 by Morphy. A very good move. But of course, Loewenthal realized the threat and he played rook to e5, saving the rook. Let's play a random move. a4, then rook takes bishop, queen takes rook, queen takes queen, king takes on f1, and king takes on e7. And black is a piece up. Black has the bishop, and white is losing. So that's why Morphy played king to f8, and that's why Loewenthal played rook to e5, f4, f3, queen to c1, h4 by Loewenthal, h6, c5, king to g7, rook to e4, queen takes on c5, king to h2, and in this position, Paul Morphy is a pawn up. Queen to c1, attacking the bishop, king to g1. King goes back for defending the bishop. Paul Morphy played rook to d2, attacking the queen. Queen to a6, and Paul Morphy captures another pawn. Rook takes on a2, and Paul Morphy has two extra pawns, now attacking the queen. Queen to d3, rook to d2, attacking the queen. Queen goes back. Rook to d1, attacking the bishop, if queen takes pawn, of course. Bishop is guarded with the queen. g3, a desperate move by Loewenthal. F takes on g3, king to g2, queen to c5. King takes on g3, queen to g1, bishop to g2, rook to d2. Well, Loewenthal is under enormous pressure. Is he going to survive? Queen to f1, and Paul Morphy captures the queen. Bishop takes on f1, king to f6. Well, in this endgame, white is losing and Paul Morphy has two extra pawns. Bishop to c4, but Loewenthal is not resigning, and he is still fighting like a stubborn general who doesn't like to lose battles. He is like the generals of the Grande Armée. So bishop takes on c4, rook takes on c4, rook to d6. After rook to d6, Loewenthal played king to f4, rook to e6, rook to d4, king to e7, rook to a4, attacking the pawn. And I think black can't defend, so Paul Morphy played king to d6, and Loewenthal captures the pawn. c5, pushing the pawn, rook to a1, c4, again pushing the pawn, marching, advancing, and Paul Morphy is dangerously close for promoting a queen. h5 by Loewenthal, g takes on h5, king to f5, rook to e3, attacking the pawn, defending, rook to e8, rook to e6, king to d5, rook takes pawn, and attacking the pawn also. So Paul Morphy only has one extra pawn, but this pawn is dangerously close to c1. And Paul Morphy doesn't care about his pawn. On h5, he played c3, rook takes on h5. Paul Morphy doesn't care. King to d4, rook to h7, rook to c8, sporting the c pawn. And what is this pawn doing? The answer, nothing. White is losing. Rook to d7, check, king to c4. So king to e3, rook to e8, check, king to f2, c2. And Loewenthal made some desperate checks. Rook to c7, again, checking the king, but nothing happens. And finally, Paul Morphy played king to c1, rook to b7, rook to e5, a very important move by Paul Morphy. f4, rook to e4, defending the pawn, and here comes rook to c4, and preparing to play king to d2, and there is no way for stopping the pawn for white. The dream is ending for Loewenthal. Loewenthal played rook to h7, king to d2, and white can't defend the pawn. So this is why Loewenthal played rook to h1 and Paul Morphy promoted to a queen. Rook takes on c1, rook takes on c1. But, you know, Loewenthal has the pawn, has the passed pawn. How to defend the pawn? Well, this part of the game is also very instructive. So we have king to e4, rook to e1 by Paul Morphy, king to d4. Well, if, let's say, king to f5, king to e3 maybe, and bringing the rook, it doesn't look good for white. So king to d4, but this move is cutting the e file for the king. King to e2, f5, king to f3, king to d5, king to f4. Loewenthal, push the pawn. How to defend? Well, Paul Morphy is very calm. He played king to g5. He knows what he is doing. f7, rook to f1. How to defend? Of course with the king. But Paul Morphy played the move and Loewenthal resigns. Paul Morphy played king to g6 and Loewenthal, the Hungarian chess master, one of the top players at that time, resigned. And well, white is losing the pawn and black has the rook. And black will checkmate the king eventually. So after Paul Morphy played king to g6, Loewenthal resigned again. And he has never managed to defeat Paul Morphy so far. And let me show you the possible continuation. F-pawn promoted to a queen. If you want, you can promote to a knight for checking the king, but then rook takes queen. It's over, and according to the computer chess engine, there is forced checkmate from 49 moves to 7 moves. So if king to e7, rook takes on f7, and as you can see, there is no way for defending the pawn. That's why. After king to g6, Loewenthal resigned. What a war, what a battle, what an incredible game. This game lasted for about the same like the chess game of Bobby Fischer and Paul Keres, but for me this game was much more entertaining than Bobby Fischer against Paul Keres. The romantic era of chess was so much more fun, isn't it? What a game, what a beautiful strategic war, what a battle between two generals, and Paul Morphy is victorious once again. So I hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.